Welcome to the ChargePoint podcast, brought to you by Flexecharge, your gateway to the future of EV charging. In each episode, we dive deep into the world of EV infrastructure, offering insights and perspectives from industry leaders, innovators, and the people at the forefront of deploying charging solutions and networks. Join us to explore the exciting developments that are accelerating our world towards sustainable mobility.
Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in today. My name is Christophe Le Philibert and I'm part of Flexecharge. In this very first episode of the ChargePoint podcast, we dive into one of the industry's hottest topics: battery storage and EV charging. Recently, we had the pleasure of hosting a virtual panel with 5 leading industry experts: a battery manufacturer, a charger manufacturer, an eMobility consultant, a CPO, and a load and energy management expert, each bringing their unique perspectives. They engage in a lively discussion about the challenges, opportunities, and solutions, sharing their views and experiences, debating and providing concrete recommendations for EV charging professionals. Here is the full recording of the virtual panel. Enjoy. Hello, welcome everybody to our panel. My name is Chris, and I'm Marketing and Growth Director at Flexecharge, and I have the pleasure today to moderate the panel. Battery storage, or BESS, or BSS, as we call it, have been making their way into the energy ecosystem for some years now, and with applications such as grid energy storage, which are well known and well functioning. And as the price keeps on decreasing, and we also see factors like the pressure on the grid and the rising number of EVs across Europe rising, then new applications for BSS are clearly emerging for EV charging infrastructure. So the topic is getting hotter. So as a specialist within the area, we thought that it was a high time to organize a panel discussion to get some experts' input and opinions. In today's panel, we have the pleasure to welcome Manuel, a leading expert and consultant within eMobility, with a solid track record from companies like Tritium and Eva. Welcome to also Matt, who will join us in a minute, the CEO of Viggo Energy, an innovative CPO from DK, Denmark, which deploys urban fast charging hubs. We also have the pleasure to have Svein Erik, who's going to join us also soon, account executive from Autel, a well-known charger manufacturer with a solid DC portfolio. And we have Steffen, thank you Steffen for joining, who's driving the activities within EV charging at Pixii. And finally, Robert, our co-founder and CTO at Flexecharge. So without further ado, let's dive into today's discussion. And you all as participants, you can post your questions in the chat and we will pick them up later. So first questions to you, Manuel. So why, as I was even explaining, why has this topic lately become such a relevant and hot topic compared to, say, 12, 15 months ago? Tell us.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you, Chris, for the organization, for the participation, and for the invitation. But straight to the topic, that's what the panel is looking. Indeed, you mentioned the clear thing. You know, the infrastructure has been developed over the last years, and the price of batteries at a few years back was prohibitive almost. You know, the consideration of having a return of investment on that was quite hard. In the last 18 months, we have seen a substantial evolution in terms of what is the offer capacity, the price capacity. And also we saw the transition from the first 3 years of the 2020, right, up to 2023. That was this rush to install sites and find those sites based on, of course, where is the grid, right? The easiest I can find a grid, the easiest I can find to install. Now, those locations of easy grid access are becoming less because they are gone, they are installed. So difficulties of finding grid, the grid costs for that, the price of batteries decreasing and becoming more consistent on the full calculation of the return of investment have been helped, you know, the starting up of seeing more and more projects. There's a second area that I also think it's very important to mention, that is, and we see it almost monthly through the Ionity, right? A large and reference across the industry, that besides of new sites, there's upgrading of sites, right? Almost every month they say we increase this site with more charges. And that upgrade was not foreseen on the initial grid connection. Now, We made one, they invested on one, right? CPOs are investing in grid connections, but in some cases they are too successful, more than what they expected. So how to get that extra success capable on replying to the customers? And then the battery storage and the energy around how to solve the energy problem, the limiting energy problem, it's bringing also a further level of opportunity for these storage systems to come as complementary to the upgrades. Instead of, now we go from starts and another even huger grid connection. So I think those two factors have definitely helped see the growth that we are having now in 2024.
So thank you, Manuel. And how do you see the acceleration of this phenomenon? Or do you see that it's on the kind of Molinar curve, or do you see really it's going to just keep on being more prominent as a challenge and therefore an opportunity?
I see that it will increase significantly. Like we said, the price of batteries is decreasing, so making some business cases that in the past were not being able to be validated by the total cost versus return of investment. So that is a huge step forward to support it. The fact of the expansions also, right? There's the experience now. 5 years ago, the experience was very little, right? Was attempts. Let's put these high power chargers, because of course we can utilize batteries in smaller, but they are mainly focused to a little bit to the higher level of power of charging, right? 150, 300, and so on. Sites that you have more than one charger per location. So this is just expanding. The success in some locations was unexpected, right? People thought, I'm making this with a 5-10 year long time and I'm installing enough. No, the behaviors, the trends of the drivers are hard to predict, right? There's tools, there's studies, there are companies dedicated on doing that, but we are humans, and humans by factor, tend to change, and as something else surrounding might help them to make the path through a different place that was not foreseen in the beginning, whatever, a new coffee shop, a new shopping mall, a new highway, and all that can change behaviors of things that were predicted 2, 3, 4 years ago and were not there, were not known, or were unexpected. So those, I do believe that there's a massive opportunity on site upgrades that is starting now. I don't think it's not at all at the boom. Because those sites are profitable sites, right? If they are successful, they are profitable. If they are profitable, they can help on what is possibly or what was in the past, a hard time to justify the investment. A battery storage can come here as a heavyweight on my total cost, right? Mm-hmm. And so if the site is successful and you have enough usage or usage enough that allows you this total cost of ownership calculation, then in a much more easier and less risk, that is what CPOs try to avoid, these solutions will come certainly to expand the sites that we miss, the sites that we see queuing in a faster way, because you don't need new permits or barely no further really hard and time-taking bureaucracies to just add an extra the support of storage into an existing site. And that is also the beauty of it.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll come back to the aspects around profitability. Anybody wants to comment on this before the next question? No, but maybe then to you, Steffen. Can you explain us a little bit? So why did Pixii start to deploy battery storage for charging infrastructure? Why did it start, and what were the challenges?
Yes, of course. But first of all, thank you very much for having the chance to participate in this webinar. I really appreciate it, and it's a very nice panel. Coming back to your question, why did we decide to go into EV charging business? First of all, because we think that we have a very good product that fits the needs of CPOs and the charge point industry, the charge point infrastructure. But based on the customer feedback, or why we actually decided to move into this business, is we see that there are a lot of grid constraints when it comes to time needed to get a grid upgrade, or to get at least a grid upgrade anyways, to build up the HPC infrastructure in a very short notice. We also had a project. It was early 2022, where we cooperated up or teamed up with a company building mobile charging platforms using our battery storage system. And we saw that there's also a need for stationary battery storage system to boost the grid capacity and to provide more power to the chargers. Based on this, we started discussion with many companies, and we saw that there are also many CPOs that are quite confident and mature in operating the chargers and running their business on the chargers, as Manuel already mentioned. And right now they want to investigate into additional revenue streams, increasing their business case by using a battery storage system, and use this battery storage system not only for boosting the grid capacity by having more power, which can be used to build up the number of chargers, but also to use the capacity in the battery storage system to participate in the energy market. Like, for instance, using the capacity during nighttime and do some intraday trading, or store your PV production for your own consumption, which lower your cost for buying energy, which you actually sell to the cars or to the car drivers. We also see a very high demand, we also see a very high demand for battery storage system in combination with EV infrastructure, especially in the Nordics, Scandinavia, where there's a very good market for frequency control. So what is happening right now, what we recognize from the market, is that there are many ambitious companies trying to improve their business case by using a battery storage system. And of course, we saw a lot of RFQs coming up in the last year for stationary battery storage systems. That's another reason why we decided to move into this business.
So thank you for that. So if you look at the geography, since you have a global perspective, I know even beyond Europe. So how do you see, where do you see you said Nordic, so if you had to rank a bit where things are cooking and happening, where is it first and where is it trickling down? What's the next kind of markets you see picking up?
Yeah, actually, it very much depends on the country and also the regulation and the needs of the companies in these countries. So, for instance, in the Netherlands, there are many companies building up charging infrastructure with HPCs. And they are facing the issue that they do not get a grid upgrade at all because the whole infrastructure is totally overbooked. And you do not always get the grid upgrade you need. Maybe during nighttime, you have the permission to withdraw some power from the grid. But during daytime, it's prohibited because there are other consumers that need the power. In another market around the world, in Australia, for instance, where we also have an office and our colleagues are keen to deploy the storage system together with PV for an off-grid application as an off-grid charger down under where you have no grid at all. It's also a very interesting market for battery storage system combined with chargers. And of course, in Scandinavia, it's already there that there's a lot of demand for battery storage systems. It also depends on the use case the customer want to operate in. So, for instance, heavy vehicle charging, truck charging, and bus charging is a very interesting market for CPOs because you have a lot of traction, especially on the highways. But it's also kind of necessary to have a large grid connection or to have at least a battery storage system because you have to provide a lot of power and also a lot of energy during daytime. And remembering the conference last year here in Germany from NOW, it was stated that grid upgrade to the high voltage grid may take up to 10 years for the permission procedure. Not including the civil work and building up the site. So there's a high ramp up in electrification of transportation. And for this, battery storage systems are the key component to make it a success story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. So thanks, Steffen. So welcome, Mads. Thanks for joining. So great to have a CPO on the panel. So could you maybe tell us briefly, so why is this topic relevant and interesting for your business? And maybe, without revealing any secrets, but a bit like, what's a bit your plans and roadmap? How do you see Viggo Energy leveraging batteries?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me on board, and apologies for my technical challenges to begin with. So I think the first thing to say is that when we started looking into to this world, so to speak, which was fairly new to us in the beginning, and I'm probably also the one here on the panel that knows the least about BESS services and so on. Then we wanted to see if there was a smarter way for us to utilize already sort of deployed grid, which we had on some of our locations. And we thought, okay, well, if we could somehow integrate that into a battery setup, we would get a number of sort of advantages, if that makes sense. So naturally, is the peak shaving. That makes good sense, right? That was the first thing that sort of came to mind. I don't think I have to explain that to any of you guys, so I quickly move on, right? And also the balancing services, which we saw in a Danish context, could actually be quite a good sort of business case additionally to just having the chargers there. And then as that was sort of for us where it started, right? That was why we started to look into this kind of setup. And then we learned that if we took that a step further and started looking into actual chargers, which came with a battery solution as well, we could get a few more sort of advantages of this kind of solution, right? So right now we are spending quite a lot of time on finding the right sort of hardware that combines both the battery and the charging option, and it gives us the opportunity to find locations where there is much less grid available, which gives us a much faster time to market. So when we do the numbers, we can see that it's better for us to deploy this kind of hardware than having to wait for 6 or 12 months until we get the grid. And then we can also use these solutions to sort of test out new locations to see if they are actually good charging locations. And this is our how should I say? This is our plan when it comes to this kind of best setup for us in the near future, where we will simply use hardware with already integrated batteries to test locations and also to get into the ground faster until we get the actual grid or the full grid capacity, and then we will simply move these these solutions on to the next site to keep testing if that makes sense. And then I think eventually we would also like to do more sort of balancing services as well with the already deployed batteries. That also makes good sense. I'm not sure we are quite there yet in our end from a technical perspective, but I'm sure that someone is working to get this thing fixed, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely going to be a topic for a webinar after summer. The frequency regulation and the battery come in again here very nicely. Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Mads, for this introduction. And so what do you see, the benefits are for CPO in installing batteries in their charging up? And maybe you could touch a bit upon the very complex topic of the business case, so to speak, which was alluded also by Manuel. Tell us a bit your thoughts.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for organizing the webinar, Chris. That's quite nice. It's a really hot topic. I have to say, yesterday I was in the Netherlands participating in what's called Arnhem Energy Week. And in the Netherlands, it's actually, they reach the limit of the grid. People tell me, CPOs, they say, well, if you have grid connection, you're lucky, yeah. If you want more, well, we are sorry, you can't get more. Often it is even the case that you cannot get grid connection, additional power, or any grid connection at all. So in the Netherlands, it's not a showstopper, but the battery is really bridge the time until grid reinforcement is in place. And grid reinforcement, putting more lines, putting bigger cables, it's a timeline of 10 to 15 years, they tell me. So the government has some initiatives to reinforce the grid, but the timeline is 2040. So 15 to 16 years until the grid is powerful enough to accommodate the transition to electrical energy. And so in the Netherlands, the batteries are a hot topic, and it's there's no way around it. And in terms of a business case in general, I mean, for a CPO or for a charging side, if you look at the utilization, it really depends. So if you have a high utilization throughout the day, so you have some peak times throughout the day, then if you increase the grid capacity, so your grid connection power, then of course you're just increasing, you get more out at these peak times. But what it doesn't help you is what I always say is to fill the pipe. I mean, if you have peaks, and you apply peak shaving, then you will also utilize the grid connection in times when there is no charging happening. So you actually get the maximum out of your grid connection. So in the best case, you can reach, it really depends on the utilization pattern of the charging infrastructure, but in the best case, you can reach 80-90% utilization of an existing grid connection point. And what more you want than that? Then you get maximum out, so you have maximum economic benefits, because you can, in the high peak times, you use the batteries to feed the EVs. When there's no EVs charging, you refill the battery to again get the maximum out. So that's in terms of business cases, it really depends. It depends on the utilization on the site, but then, as all the others said already, I mean, it's about overcome the problem of not getting a proper power. I mean, additional grid connection. And second layer for CPOs, the secondary layer is then, of course, also earn money. I mean, if you have the battery, then, of course, use it for intraday trading, use it for frequency response, FCR, and things like that. And thus making your infrastructure more profitable, or profitable at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Robert, for those points. We'll come back to Erik. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, one other thing. When I said the Netherlands, we seem to be seeing something which I also didn't expect to see that quick, but it seems to be in Norway. It's a similar case. So because of the high sort of penetration of EVs, there's also more and more grid connection limits where now batteries are coming in to overcome that problem. So batteries will in the future play an essential critical role in the next 10, 15 years, 100% for CPOs, no way around it.
Yeah,
maybe a comment on this.
Yeah, please comment before. Yeah, go ahead.
If allowed, sorry. Yeah, maybe a comment on this. I totally agree with you, Robert. And just to mention another thing, here in Germany, usually most of the companies say we have the chance to get the grid upgrade we need, and they are not facing the issue that the permission or the grid is there or isn't there. But in reality, there are already the first DSOs which are not permitting to install any more heat pumps, especially in eastern part of Germany. There are some regions where the DSOs do not have the chance to allow installing some more heat pumps. And how do they want to install EV chargers or AC chargers for home charging in this case? So it's coming everywhere. I think the market is still rising. And in some countries, we are already there, that the grid constraints are bringing up a problem, which are a really tough thing for CPOs.
Absolutely, yeah. It's yeah. So if we go back to again, Svein Erik, you are a specialist of Norway, also working on the Danish market. So as a representative of Autel, so DC charger manufacturer, tell us a bit about your perspective, how you see batteries being part of the solution, and what do you hear from as requirements from the people you're talking to in on the customer side?
Yeah, so I work all over in the Nordics, but of course in Norway we already saw this several years ago with the mobile charging solutions, where the need for battery was came very quickly. Like if you needed to charge EVs at the ski resort, but you didn't have the time, you didn't have the economy in having the permanent charger there. So we made these container solutions with batteries and EV chargers that could be actually moved from like a ski resort in winter and then like a camping space in the summer, campers place in the summer. So I've seen this for several years, the need, but what I've seen the last year is not only in Norway but also in the Nordic countries, is the sort of exponential rise in this demand, the combination of batteries and EV charging, and mainly that is it's threefold sort of. It's one of the main thing is of course that the grid does not have the capacity. So in order to do a high power site, you need extra batteries to help out the grid. However, in especially Sweden and also Denmark, it's very lucrative, but especially Sweden, lucrative to sell back to the grid to do the peak shaving and to balance and to use the batteries to balance the grid. So in these cases, when we sort of do the EV charging for a site, we do it combined with batteries because they basically very quickly earn back the investment of the battery and start making money on it from assisting the grid with balancing and of course doing the peak shaving. The third thing, which is where it's sort of going exponentially now, is within the actual commercial side, where you have, for instance, of course, it was mentioned heavy trucks, so logistics centers, and they don't really have enough capacity on the grid, so you need it. You also have like Oslo, Copenhagen, Stockholm now, you're not allowed to do construction without, it has to be fully green. So you need the mobile container solutions, which is sort of, it's not permanent. So of course they need the battery inside to cover to be able to have any chance of charging the excavators and heavy trucks. And then we have now what I work a lot with is megawatt charging sites. And there you need the megawatt charging sites for logistics, but you rarely have enough power in the grid. So I have seen batteries with EVs for a long time, so let's say at least last 3 years, but I've just seen a curve going like this. It's exponential. Over the next 5 years, it will be crazy.
Okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. Very exciting. Yeah, I think the construction sites and temporary solution are also part of you could say a CPO business. So it's quite interesting to see those popping up. So we're starting to have a few questions that are popping up. I'll start with a simple one, maybe for you, Steffen, and that will feed also discussion. So Piotr is asking, what is a typical battery size for a charging site? Example for a site with 4 times 300 kilowatt chargers. What would you recommend there?
That's actually a tough question, not an easy question. So when it comes to sizing the batteries, and that's something I also want to elaborate on later today. When it comes to the challenges we are having in a discussion with our customers, it very much depends on your size of the grid connection. So how much power do you have available from the grid all the time? What is the penetration of the EV chargers? So what's the so-called simultaneously factor you want to calculate or you want to take into consideration when it comes to sizing the batteries? And do you want to be able to scale up the number of batteries or the power from the batteries and the energy stored in the batteries in a later stage, so the next 3, 5, or 8 years? But typically, to answer your question, when it comes to 4 DC chargers with 300 kilowatt each, considering grid connection of 100 kilowatt, we usually recommend to start with probably 600 kilowatt power and make a calculation based on the load profile, which you recognized on site, to see what's the actual peak power demand you want to serve for the charging events. So it's a kind of tricky question, but they are wise to find out which size of the batteries might fit best.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Nicholas, you want to moderate the questions? Next question, maybe?
Sure. So hi guys. We've got another question here from Paolo, and he's asking what the benefits are in countries where there's no dynamic tariffs. So specifically for the application of batteries.
Maybe picking the topic as I at the beginning, and Paolo, I don't know if you joined at the very beginning. So the batteries are there to support this in multiple ways, right? It's not just, of course, the grid exchange, the dynamic tariffs that brings another full opportunity of depreciation on your side. So the first thing that is costly is get a grid connection, and as far as you are from the right point, it becomes even more. Now, if you have that grid connection, the grid connection works by, in a bidirectional way, let's say like that. And that's where also there's a massive opportunity for these sites, right? There are sites being built with 1 megawatt, 2, 5, 10 megawatts of grid connection. So if you do have the opportunity, and we were just discussing our not having that opportunity, if you have that opportunity of having that grid connection, both you are allowed to get in, as you are typically allowed to bring energy back. And that energy back is an opportunity. Now, if you can't work within dynamic tariffs, but we are looking to, a bit of what we were discussing at the beginning of the charging side. So the batteries bring you an opportunity for the sites that will take 12 months to start earlier. If you make like a solution like Kelly, where at Circle K, with a 44 kilowatt connection, they managed to put, 2 chargers of 150 kilowatts. And who could say, I have 44 kilowatts, but I can offer 2 times 150 or even 4 plugs. So it's not exactly needed to be part of the dynamic tariffs to enable charging, to enable infrastructure. And that has been seen beautifully by that case of Aliware, where in really the normal grid connection that you might still find around 40 kVA, and by that putting, a high charging power side. So there's plenty of opportunities, like I was saying in the beginning, to upgrade sites that are fully used and are queuing. If you put a battery, you can remove the queuing for another year. So there's a lot of advantages that can come into the business case, even though you cannot make the second part, that is, utilize the batteries back, or the energy that you stored back to the grid.
Yeah, I think this is a really great point there, Manuel, because enabling the infrastructure installation in the first place might just be the start of a business case, which you otherwise would not have at all.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And even to prove, these sites can be proven. We talked about mobile and portable. Yes, summer it's here, concerts are there, and a lot of stadiums and concerts and so on that happens. It's true. The grid connections are one of the main pain points for the deployment of infrastructure. So with a very little, normal construction grid connection that we would say it's on the 40 kVA, that is something that typically you can get. You can already try to put a larger high power site before you take that time, and drivers can start utilizing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Manuel. I think that was a quite elaborative answer to the question. We have another one that's actually, I think that's an interesting one as well. If you compare an integrated charger with battery solution with one that has a charger and a separate battery, let's say manually integrated on site, how do you opt for either? So a fixed package, or one that you basically select charger and battery by yourself?
Maybe we can ask, maybe Svein Erik, I guess in your portfolio, you have chargers without integrated batteries, or do you start to have integrated batteries? Can you refresh us in why do you even one or the other?
Yeah, so we don't manufacture batteries ourselves. We are purely an EV charging manufacturer beside the other business of Autel, which is car diagnostic. So we think that the end user should be able to choose different batteries, and also over the coming years, I think they will sort of buy one battery, they will add another one. So for us, it's really important to be compatible. So that's why we are very appreciative of the cooperation we have with Flexecharge, with also with Pixii. So we, as a charging manufacturer, need to make sure our chargers are compatible with the main batteries and inverters. And I think it should be possible to combine. I don't think you should need to have the same brand, or even if it exists, the same brand of batteries and EV chargers.
If I can add something, I think it boils down again to the question whether you create a vendor lock-in. It's a question about scalability. This is what you have to answer yourself, right? So if you use a charger with integrated battery, of course, it might not scale as a stationary battery. At the same time, if you want to extend the site at a later time, maybe you even get grid connection in 5 years and you want to extend, which we will see 100% with higher penetration of EVs. We will see sites will expand. Then you are tied to one vendor, and then you don't know if that vendor still exists in the market. You see, it's a very dynamic market right now. So, of course, my advice would be, stay vendor independent, stay open, have a solid supply chain risk management, and use a charger and have a separate battery. But at the end, that is an individual question every CPO has to ask herself when installing.
Yeah, so let's ask it. So Mads, have you done any thinking on the models out there that you see models coming up with the chargers and battery integrated, ex-Charge on? Any thoughts on your end? Have you made some considerations in terms of purchase of solution?
Yeah, sure. I think if I could choose myself, I would choose the integrated setup, even though they become quite large. We would prefer that because they're simply easier to move if and when grid sort of arises one day. When that being said, we also have a few locations where there's no space for these large cabinets. So instead, we go for a sort of an external battery setup with sort of more like a satellite kind of chargers instead, right? Due to sort of space constraints, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah.
I would definitely complement that. It's very much on the location architecture, right? If you are talking about 1-2 chargers, having the extra cabinet for batteries might not be the best fitting or possible to fit. So an integrated charger with battery can. If you look to have a little bit more expanded, then if you have an integrated battery, even though they are already capable of providing energy outside where they are integrated at specific charger, they tend to work on a one-on-one, right? My battery, this charger, and not to distribute so much the power. So it's the opportunity of that storage versus more plugs, more parkings, more vehicles, versus a little bit more 1-2, right? Because typically the chargers can be 1-2 cars. So that has been the normal study when I'm asked within the consultancies to understand which locations we will place one versus the other.
Clear. Good.
Right. Do you want to continue with questions, or do you want to go for?
No, good. Let's take the next question that feeds the discussion nicely.
Of course. Yes. So we've got another one that basically plays on, let's say, the decision of a CPO to go for a battery instead of the grid upgrade. So that's the scenario, right? So you choose a battery, you install it to make up for a lack of grid. Now, you get a grid upgrade in the future. What do you do with the battery? So
we always have a new site. So
yeah,
when we look to CPOs, we don't look to CPOs that stop at the first site, right? So there's a path to keep growing. Will always be the next site that they are growing further and that they can do. But of course, there will be cases that you might not need it because it's a one-time case and so on. So for sure, there are cases already in the industry where batteries can be purchased, can be leased, can be rented. So there are opportunities out there already within this battery space of having things permanently or mid-term or even short-term. When we see that, we talked a few times already in this conference about, during the construction, right, as Robert mentioned, or doing, a summer festival or a stadium or something. I would expect now to the Euro Cup in Germany that some places are, supported by renewable energy and storage instead of having big generators. Right? And luckily in a month we are seeing those cases happening because we also need more charging in the parking lots of the stadiums that we don't have today, right? So let's wish for the best that the organization is preparing that kind of structure in a more sustainable way.
And then again, I mean, one thing to say, I said that earlier already. I think one strong motivation for the battery is to fully 100% get to, not 100%, but that would be ideal, 100% throughput through your grid connection. I mean, 24 hours, get 100% through. And this is what you can do with the battery because you don't get that with EVs. You will always have times where you have higher utilization than other times during night, for example. It depends really on the site. Or we talked about fleet charging, logistics centers. I mean, you can use the battery to buffer that out and really get the maximum out through your grid connection. So there might not even if you get additional grid connection, you might even decide to keep the battery there or even, put more capacity in.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, one of the use cases of applying batteries to charging stations is to reduce the reliance on the grid and hence save some of your performance-based network fees. So that obviously depends on the market in which you're operating. But Germany is one of the bigger markets where this is an enormous price or cost pressure on CPOs. Yeah. So even if you had a megawatt, you might still want to utilize a battery, to avoid actually getting a full megawatt from the grid.
We are having customers right now which actually do that. So they have the grid connection, but they see 3, 4, like 7, 8 peaks in the year, and they don't want to pay for these peaks. They just, want to have, let's say, virtual limiting of the peaks, so prevent the peaks. But then also battery can help to get, to stay within a certain limit. So, but then it's an economic calculation of when the battery makes sense and when not. And it depends strongly again on the utilization and the site.
Yeah, I got another good one. I think for Steffen. This goes about the use cases that you can basically activate by having a battery. So I know Pixii is also working on various grid service use cases. So maybe Steffen, you can help the audience understand what you can do and offer there.
You mean which additional services can be activated by using a battery storage system?
Outside of supporting the charger itself, yes.
Yeah, of course. So we have customers that are using our battery storage system and connected to aggregators to participate in the frequency market, for instance, or in the energy market and do some intraday trading. For the frequency market, which is quite promising, also by revenue, which you can make there, you try to stabilize the frequency at 50 hertz. So when it deviates from 50 hertz, you want to have some additional power assets in the grid to boost or to provide the power or consume the power from the grid to stabilize the frequency at 50 hertz. And based on this, you can make some additional revenue. And this could be done by having an energy management system, like, for instance, Flexecharge, which communicates to an aggregator and schedules the battery based on the bidding you made on the energy market or the frequency market for the batteries. Another example is to combine decentralized batteries in a virtual power plant and use this capacity, like the whole battery capacity on different sites, to trade energy on the EEX. Could be also done.
How often is this use case stacking applied in your customer projects? Is it becoming more frequent? Is it something that is more of a rarity still? How do you see that?
Depending on the market, it's more and more frequent. So, as already mentioned a few times here in the meeting from several people, the frequency market in Sweden and Denmark is very promising. And due to this, our customers in these markets or operating in these markets have the ambitious goal to use the batteries for this market. And for other customers in other markets or in other countries, the business case becomes more and more crucial, and they want to investigate and understand, what can I do with this kind of complex asset? Like, battery storage system is quite complex in operation, and how can I gain some revenue and increase my business case? So it's actually merging right now that people are investigating into this.
All right. Well, it shows that the market is growing, and the technologies that we are providing are actually helping utilize those new business cases. Yeah, that's good news. I've got another one for you, Robert. This plays towards the integration challenges of actually bringing different assets into one group and optimizing them. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about how we approach the integration challenges of charge points, batteries, payment systems, EMS?
Yeah, basically, to start with the chargers, I mean, we are lucky that with charging stations, we are having a pseudo standard open charge point protocol. And from our perspective, from Flexecharge, we stick to the standard and communicate to chargers only via OCPP. But as soon as you want to integrate batteries into charging infrastructures and you want to have an overlaying energy load management system, which covers and controls charge currents for both the chargers, the electric vehicle charging stations, and the batteries, then it becomes a bit of a challenge, because obviously for batteries, there is no such standard. For us, it is that we have to, or we integrate every individual battery based on a specific interface and a specific protocol. In that case, for batteries, it's a Modbus, it's MQTT or via API. And we are integrating the top, or not the top, I mean the requested battery from our customers and provide the service to it to maintain the interface. But the challenge really is for batteries that for battery integration that we are having these different protocols in use, which also need to be maintained. And it would be really great to have a sort of standard for batteries. And I think there's something in the pipeline even for OCPP 201. I know there's something in the pipeline for power meters to easily integrate them via OCPP. And with batteries, I didn't hear something. It could well be that there's also something in the pipeline that you could, transport all that and have one common protocol to sort of feed and communicate with all the systems. But until that is there, we are providing the sort of integrator gateway for batteries and chargers. And the beauty is that we are compatible to any charging station, which is OCPP, which has an OCPP interface. And at the same time now integrating with the top battery manufacturers, so we can provide customers easy integration of batteries through our platform, through our system.
Maybe
the challenge, just one additional thing
Robert,
to that. I mean, one additional sentence to that. So what has happened so far is that battery manufacturers, they started to talk to charging station manufacturers. For example, Pixii was talking to Autel to do a direct integration. Other battery manufacturers talk to other charging station manufacturers to do direct integration. And then you see that sort of a can of worms. And this sort of problem we are trying to solve to provide a layer, load energy management layer for easy integration of all the chargers and all the batteries, no matter which vendor it is.
Steffen, I think you wanted to unmute yourself. Maybe you have something to add, especially since the batteries here have a bit of a particular integration standpoint.
Yeah, maybe coming back to a question we had a few minutes ago, when the question was raised, what is the why shouldn't a CPO have a battery, or what are the advantages of having a battery, and what's the challenge I need to overcome when installing batteries? What we see in our discussion is that many CPOs are concerned that they are kind of the guinea pig for having batteries on site and combined with chargers, and they want to understand how exactly it works, and is it possible to have a more or less plug-and-play ready system where I place a battery, just activate a checkbox somewhere, and the system is working and running, and it's reliable. And this is what I wanted to comment on what you said, Robert. Based on this integration, which we have with Flexecharge, it's possible to use the batteries with every charger, since you're using the OCPP protocol, MQTT communicate with our batteries, and can also connect to the smart meter and orchestrate the whole asset on site as one controller.
All right, nice. Thank you very much, Steffen. All right. Chris, shall we continue with questions? We have 10 more minutes, I believe, yeah?
Yes.
All right. There was a follow-up, basically, on you, Steffen, regarding the FCR revenues that are possible. Is there a example with some real numbers which you could share with us? Would that be possible?
Yeah, I mean the numbers, how much money you gain with the frequency control in Sweden, for instance. I think that's what the question is aiming for. They're public, and of course we can elaborate on this. So the FCR market, depending on what kind of FCR market you want to activate, is FCRN, FCRD. Anyways, you can gain a lot of revenue, like for instance in FCRD up, it's approximately 300,000 euro per megawatt and year when you want to use the batteries to participate in this market.
Yeah, I think we'll make sure to maybe share your emails, or at least people can reach out to you, I guess, on LinkedIn if they want to follow up on the conversation, right, and go deeper. I think there's an interesting question from Raul, which I may share. So he's asking, since Flexecharge is able to integrate Pixii batteries, is Flexecharge certified as a power plant controller referring to VDE standard, so the VDE IRN 4015 and 4110 in Germany for inverter powers more than 135 kilowatt. That's very specific. I don't know if you get that, Robert, and you can answer, or maybe also you, Nicolas, since you're also savvy on the topic.
Yeah. Starting with VDE 4110, that's the sort of medium voltage layer. What we can see right now is a lot of requests from DNOs, so operators, network operators, to control reactive power for chargers. And we are currently working on a solution to provide that. It's not so much on us. We can basically provide that. We can also provide that for the battery, that's not a problem, but it's more the chargers, these high power chargers right now. There's no sort of common standard, first of all, to report reactive power, but secondly, of course, also no chance to control or adjust reactive power. And we are working on the solution for that. But I don't see us as a plant controller. I mean, we are. That's not what our system is being made for. To control for a solar plant the reactive power. Maybe Nicholas can also comment to that. We are more providing the interface to the DNO to set a specific set point, and then we will be forwarding that to the charger or the battery.
Yeah, the solution is around bridging the gap between the requirements of the DNO control and the charging stations. That's again a bit similar to why we are interfacing with batteries. We help bridge the gap between various assets, or in this case, the DNO provides a gateway typically, and again, every charger manufacturer would have to integrate with that particular gateway of the DNO, and instead we do that once, and then it becomes available through our technology platform to every CPO, and hence every charger manufacturer that is utilized by the CPO.
Yeah. What we can, however, do, coming back to that, is to aggregate sites into virtual power plants, including the batteries, and of course also solar panels if they are there. But for those CPOs we are working with, public sites, commercial sites, solar plants are, I would say, right now it's a bit rare. I would say it's more and more coming, but it's more the batteries we are talking right now for the integration.
Okay, thanks. Pick one more question here from Gabriel. He's asking, so if looking at the multi-integration use cases, so what could be done to simplify the customer experience? Pre-studies, cost and risk awareness, purchasing operations. Any thoughts on this, Manuel, as a consultant, helping CPOs in their projects?
Yeah, so I think we have touched in a lot of the complexities, right? We have chargers, we have batteries, we have grid, we have other consumptions. We want overall to help. I think at the end of the day, the intention of all these discussions is we have a problem. The grid is not sufficient. I think we all agree in the different discussions. As we grow further, we see more need. And I would say sometimes it's maybe not sufficient at the right place at the right time. Sometimes the grid is sufficient. We talked about the Norwegian grid. The Norwegian grid has quite an extra capacity, right? They ran 100% on renewable and mainly on hydro. So it's not that it might not reach at the right point at the right time. And then it's this combination of having the right energy at the right time that brings back also these alternatives and the business cases around. That is, if I get the grid connection and I put the storage, okay, those two need to work together. So where do I get my energy from? Where is more efficient? Why I'm getting it from two sources? It's because when it's not sufficient, or because I want to mitigate my own costs. So what we talked about load management, but a lot more energy management, it's definitely a massive, important area of business, right? So the overall energy management in a small scale on a site, in a large scale in a city, or even in a country, it's also something to evolve substantially for us to have this concept of working, because even the German ministry a few years ago or a few months ago said, I expect by 2030 to have a few terawatts of batteries around in cars. So we are talking about storage, but the cars are the storage, right? I had a case that I was asked by a factory, okay, I want to put a storage, and I buy a car. You get the same 50 kilowatt hour battery, and you get wheels. You don't need it on the weekends, so you can use it for something else. So cars have batteries. Batteries are there. Of course, located storage solutions can do, but at the end of the day comes a lot to a few of the questions that we have, the energy management system. And companies have been evolving, at the charger side a bit less, the CPMS side a bit more. Some Green Flux has integrated some, you guys have integrated some, and it's that step that is not yet regulated, like Robert was saying. Charger, it's easy. It became most CPP, people felt into it, okay, agreed into it, became an open standard, even though there's a push, I want this command and that command. So there's still a forum to integrate. Storage, inverters, and other sides of energy need to come into this ecosystem. So it is quite important to create the ecosystem, how to control the ecosystem and these multiple players through their APIs to function together. As to the part that cost studies, risk awarenesses, and so on, and the integration asked by Gabriel, it's very hard. So that's why, on a start to put the battery, you need to make your calculations right. And might be because you need a site fast enough, and that's the reason for. It's because you want to complement it. Comes also to the customer experience. What is the customer experience? I can put 50 kilowatts. Is that a good experience? No. Eventually I need to give 150 where I only have a 50 kilowatt grid. So there's no true, calculator, side by side, case by case. The calculation needs to be combined and to understand. But for sure, there's need some usage, right? And what we see is that a battery there can push energy for the trading and so on. But there are countries also limiting that. You can't just buy a battery, buy your negative and sell on positive. That's in many countries illegal. You can't just utilize the advantages of the grid. Now, as you have it integrated in the charging and you have a name to give to charging, but you have a lot of, I would say Mads has that, a lot of time the site is there fully capable and there's no cars. So it's also absurd to keep that site with that grid connection and eventually the storage just not doing anything. So then these combination cases as I'm there, nobody is utilizing. My preferred point is to charge cars, but I'm not doing it and the grid needs, I support. So then these paybacks come together and start creating a much better ecosystem that will help us all at the end.
Yeah, sounds good. I think we could continue for a long time. We'll probably make a half-day summit on BSS and EV charging and frequency. That's where the future is holding. Thank you very much for joining. For those who didn't get answered to your question, we're really sorry. We want to close here. You can send your question to hello@flexicharge.com. We'll follow up. And we'll be happy also to bridge to the speakers. If somehow you don't get in touch with them, we're happy to make the intro. I'm sure they won't mind, right? And last comment, closing, Robert?
Yes. I wanted just to add to you. I mean, hopefully we will see us all at the Power to Drive in Munich. And it would be really great to continue some of the discussions. I mean, even some of the guys, of course, which are here in the webinar, but also those which joined and had questions. I mean, just come to our booth. I mean, we are so happy to discuss use cases, challenges, and see if we can come up with solutions. I mean, that would be great. So just an invitation to say, see you at Power to Drive in Munich next month.
And we intend to have more webinars in the future. And probably one of the next one will be dedicated to the German market with this infamous rules and regulation around So we'll talk about that in another situation.
Challenging one.
Challenging one, right? We love them. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. And thank you to the panelists, and have a great day. And that's a wrap for today. We hope you enjoyed our virtual panel and gained valuable insights into deploying battery storage at your charging sites. If you have any questions about this promising yet complex solution, feel free to reach out. Remember to review and share this podcast within your network. We greatly appreciate your support. Until next time, take care and drive safely.